Hi, I'm Lindsay from Lindsay Elliott Coaching and creator of Break Up with Addiction coaching program. And today I'm going to be talking about how to manage urges. So when we're talking about managing urges, we're going to lump them all together. So no matter what you may have a habit to do or what you may be addicted to, the process of, or some of the tips that I'm going to give you, some of hopefully the insights I'm going to share around urges is relevant to no matter what the thing that you are addicted to or what your habit is. So if it's checking your phone, if it's smoking, if it's binging, purging, shopping, if it's alcohol, if it's gambling, if it's porn, if it's sweets, I don't know, anything you like that we can potentially be addicted to or have a habit with. So this is something that, because a lot of my client base is people with habits and addictions, and this is invariably a question that they will ask me, and something that actually came up in the free coaching group that I run on Wednesdays every other week, is how do I manage, how do I deal with an urge? And so by that, obviously what we mean is that a thought and then quite an intense feeling will drop into our head to say, have the cigarette, check the gambling site, buy something online, take a drink, eat the cake. So that's what we're talking about when it's an urge. So it's a thought accompanied with usually a pretty intense feeling. So the first bit that I want to just clarify around this, so I'm just picking up one of my props, is I'm going to talk about how the mind, so like the machine mind, so like we're going to think about the brain as the computer in our heads, okay? And this is what these teeth are going to represent, is the computer in our heads, how this gets set up, okay? So how an addiction or a habit gets set up. Now, I do have longer videos on this, but I'm just going to briefly go over it here because it's super helpful to know when we're talking about managing an urge. So what we have is at some point in life, an event would have come along, a circumstance would have come along, a feeling would have come along that we would have had a lot of intense emotion around. So, maybe something difficult in our childhood or in our teenage years or in our early adult life. And at some point, there would have been an uncomfortable, intense feeling, something that we didn't, in inverted commas, like. And our brain will come in and go, okay, what can we do to feel better? And at some point, it might have like innocently coincided with picking up a biscuit or buying something or trying a cigarette or having our first drink. And at some point, like the feeling we were experiencing would have changed. Now, feelings move all on their own, okay? But what the brain does is the next time that we have a feeling moving through us, an intense emotion, it could be the same emotion that we had first time round, it could be a different emotion, that the brain looks into its memory and it goes, because it has to be kind of quite streamlined because there's so much information coming into us all of the time. It looks into its memory bank and it goes, what helped last time? This is quite a simplistic view, but I do believe this is how the process works. What helped last time with this feeling? I know, we had a cigarette. I know, we had a bit of cake. And then it says, do that again. And then the feeling passes. Now, feelings pass all by themselves. I just want to clarify, and that is in my other video. It's never about the cake, the gambling, the bit of food. The feelings pass anyway, but a link gets made in the brain so that every time the feeling comes up and then it gets sort of generalized into stress, anxiety, anger, almost any intense feeling. And the brain says, oh, you know what's going to make you feel better? Do that thing. Do that thing that you're addicted to. Eat the cake, smoke the cigarette, gamble, look at the porn, okay? Because what it's saying is, that feels better. And we're always trying to feel better. The brain is innocently trying to look after us, okay? Because strong emotion, intense emotion to a brain is like, whoa, what's going on? It's like a threat to survival. Of course, our emotions aren't a threat to our survival, but to a brain, that's how it can look. So then we get this habitual pattern going round in the brain, and then the addiction itself then becomes an issue, doesn't it? Otherwise you wouldn't be looking at this video. At some point, we all wake up to the fact that the thing we are addicted to is creating more harm, more damage, more stress, more pain than it's actually relieving in terms of, or what we believe it is relieving. So this kind of habitual pattern then gets really, really ingrained in our brain and in our neurology. So that's the first point that I really want to make about an urge, okay, is that it isn't personal. It's nothing to do with you. It doesn't say anything about you. It doesn't mean anything about you. It is simply a habitual thought loop and a pattern that your brain has innocently got into. A strong feeling comes along, an uncomfortable feeling comes along, something that we don't want to deal with comes along, and the brain helpfully says, stroke unhelpfully, read that, do that again, have the cigarette, eat the cake, go shopping. And so what I want hopefully to illustrate with this is that it's nothing to do with you anymore. It is simply like a broken record playing. It's like background noise that the brain just kind of goes, oh, do that, oh, do that, oh, do that all of the time. So that's all that an urge is made of, is energy. So first of all, we have kind of the energy of whatever feelings we're feeling that might get a bit uncomfortable or a bit intense. And then we have the energy of the thought coming in, do the thing, smoke the cigarette, eat the cake, gamble. And that comes in to try to help the other energy. But it's all energy flowing and moving, okay? It has absolutely nothing to do with you. I know that can seem maybe like a little bit of madness to suggest that, but what I want you to see is that the super habitual nature, the broken record nature of it is now just something that's stuck in your neurology, okay? And I know that when I was addicted, it was something that I took so personally that it meant a lot about me, and it caused an extra layer of misery that actually holds the addiction in place longer. Okay, so just trying to take that off of, or play with it, take that off of your kind of like list, is that it means something about you. What if it is impersonal? What if it is the consequence of a habitual nature of a machine in your head? Okay. So the second, that's the other thing that often people will say to me, well, it's in my voice. And that's why, I think it's me. Because what we want to start seeing is that this habitual thought, this habitual voice is not you. It is the machine, it is the narrator, it is the brain in your head. It isn't who you are. And so when we can start to kind of separate a bit and see that actually the urge isn't me, even though of course it sounds like it's talking in our voice because it comes into our head, but what if it isn't? It's not actually talking in your voice, it just happens to be about you, but it's actually way more impersonal than that. So maybe you're starting to understand a bit about how thought and feeling work. Maybe you're beginning to realise that the addiction or the habit is starting to create more issues than it is helping or solving. I mean, it of course never helps or solves anything, but we get stuck in beliefs that it does. And you maybe want to start investigating the urges. So the first point is starting to see that it's not personal, it's habitual, it's like a broken record. The second thing that you can do is, as an urge comes up, is just when you notice, when you can, in a very gentle way, just gently start to get a few seconds space or a gap and just ask yourself, what is it I really need here? What is it I'm really wanting? Now, sometimes it's just this kind of kicking into play, and you might be able to catch on to that. But other times it might be that actually the feeling underneath it is I'm tired, or I need a break, or I need a rest, or I am hungry, or, I need to not think about this for a moment. I need to take some time for myself. So just starting to catch, okay, is there a need under here that I need to be paying attention to? So, for example, I'm working with a client at the moment who is wanting to look less at social media, and she's playing with as the urge comes up to look at social media, she's just gently investigating, hey, what is it I really need? And she's finding that things like she's a bit bored, she needs a break, she's a bit tired. And so then you can start to, not in a forcey kind of willpower way, just start to say, okay, can I then just give myself the rest? Can I find another way to entertain myself out of the boredom, even though it's all going to pass anyway? Can I find another way to meet this need? Okay, particularly if it's for rest or for relaxation or for doing nothing, can you find another way just to take that break? So that's the second tip. Okay, start to look at what is actually underneath. What's the need underneath, and see if you can start to meet that. The other place that people get quite stuck with urges is that the intensity of the urge makes them think that it's something super important. So I think we have in our understanding a bit of a misunderstanding that the intensity of emotion equals I need to pay more attention to it. So perhaps with an urge, we might have say, right, I'm not going to eat any sweets today. And so like first off, the urge sort of comes and we kind of dismiss it and we don't look at it. And then it's like, and it comes back next time a bit stronger. And then we kind of like, no, I'm not doing that. I've said I'm not going to eat any sweets. And then it comes back a bit more loudly and then it starts to look a bit more important. And then we start to get really caught up in it and the energy of it kind of starts to grow. And then innocently we can kind of think, well, it's getting so loud now. It's so intense now. It must be really important. I must pay attention to it. And then we eventually give in to the urge, or we give in because we just don't want to feel that anymore. But what I want to suggest is that the intensity of the emotion doesn't mean that you need to pay any more attention to it than if it was just kind of like a gentle nudge, just something kind of like, oh, I need to go to the toilet kind of passes through your mind. I mean, you do just end up getting up and going to the toilet, right? But what if it isn't true that the intensity of the emotion around the urge means that it's more important? As far as I can see, the intensity of it is just this machine brain it's not being paid attention to. It's not getting what it wants. A bit like a toddler or a spoilt child. It just kind of starts going louder and louder and louder and louder because, oh, they're not doing it. They're not engaging with the thing that I want them to. It gets louder and louder and louder. So what if the intensity is just the brain getting louder and more insistent, a bit like a toddler, kind of going into a bit of a tantrum? It doesn't actually mean that it's any more beneficial or any more useful to you or that you have to pay any more attention to it. So just see if you can start to notice that or question, does the intensity of this urge mean that I need to pay any more attention to it? Okay. And something that sometimes can help with that is to question, okay, if this urge, if this insistent, loud kind of feeling that kind of just gets louder and louder and louder, if it were in another language that I couldn't understand, what would I do about it? So if the thing was saying, instead of have a cigarette in English or eat the cake in English, if it was saying it in Japanese, which I don't personally understand, I would just be like, what's that noise? There's a noise here. There's something in my head. There's a getting louder and louder and louder, but I wouldn't know what to do with it. So of course I'd just be like, okay, that's just going to be there until it's going to pass away. So that's just really interesting to kind of play with that. If this was in another language, what does it feel like? First off, it just feels like an intense emotion building that absolutely is going to pass. And I'm going to talk about that in conclusion in a minute. But if it wasn't in my language, what would I do with it? And the answer would be nothing. You wouldn't know to smoke the cigarette. You wouldn't know to eat the cake. You wouldn't know to look at the prawn because you wouldn't understand it. So just kind of play with that as well. And ultimately, I think, so the fifth tip that I would say with urges, and really the biggest piece of it, is that ultimately they are just energy coming from our minds, coming from our thought, attached to the thought, attached to this habitual, repetitive thought that's absolutely going to pass all on its own. So our mood changing, our feelings changing, our state of mind changing, even though it looks like it has been paired to the thing we are addicted to. I ate the cake and I felt better. I smoked the cigarette and I felt better. What has happened in every single instance there has that the mind has, for a few seconds, the thought loop has just been broken. It's quietened down because all of this insistence that feels so painful has momentarily gone away. And that's why you feel better. It's not that the act of doing the habit, it's the fact that the feeling passes all by itself anyway. And then what you'll notice is, if you're really stuck and have been in a habit and addiction that you want to give up, you get a few seconds peace of, oh, that feels better. And that's the only reason that you do feel better, is because you have a thought that says, oh, that feels better. And then immediately comes in, oh, why did you do that? You know you shouldn't. You've really promised that you're going to give this up. This is so bad for your health. And off it goes. Off it goes. So ultimately, of course, the way out of any addiction, I think, is understanding it, understanding how our mind works, how our feelings work. But truly, at some point, we do just have to feel the urge, let it pass, because it absolutely will. And then eventually, the more that we do that, we feel the urge, we let it pass, all of the thinking that's attached to it eventually just goes away. And then we are through the addiction. So at some point, we never know when that's going to be. We have a final urge that we feel and we don't act on, and then we just don't get it again. So yes, whilst I think ultimately we have to feel it, we have to feel the urge, know that it's safe and move through it. When we're in the process of understanding it, I would never be too kind of like, right, I'm just going to have to feel it and suffer it, because that's too much like willpower. And I think in the end, that just makes it more difficult. So maybe look at the few points that I've mentioned before. See if you can see that it's not personal. See if you can question that the intensity means you need to pay attention to it. Wonder what it would be like if it was in a different language. Okay. See if you notice that the feeling passes. So when you can't engage in your habit, so for example, you can't binge and purge because you're at someone's house or you're in an airport and you can't smoke, see if you notice that the urge passes anyway, because truly that's how we're designed, to flow constantly all of the time. Every single thought and feeling flows all the time, including urges. So I hope this has been helpful. If you are really stuck in a habit or an addiction, then I do have a specialised one-to-one coaching programme where I talk you through this, explore this with you, and so much more to help you to break up with your addiction or your habit. The details are in the comments of the section below. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do like and subscribe to my channel, and please do share this video if you know someone who's struggling with a habit or an addiction. Thanks ever so much for watching. Bye bye.